Okay, so we're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. And once again, the day is Sunday, October 2nd, 2022, and we are live. Welcome to the African History Network show. The call-in number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment, okay? And we're also broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. So September 15th, Thursday, September 15th, 2022, I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Normally I'm on Fridays, and I was on this past Friday. Normally I'm on Fridays, but I ended up being on Thursday instead of Friday. And I was on with Dr. Greg Carr, Reese Colbert, Black Women Views. You see Reese sometimes on MSNBC, on Simone Sanders show on MSNBC, and also Dr. Jason Nichols. And we talked about the movie that's coming out in 2023, the live action movie of The Little Mermaid, okay, starring Halle Bailey, okay, the live action movie of The Little Mermaid starring Halle Bailey. She's an African-American actress and singer. A lot of people know her for singing as a duo with her sister Chloe. And it's the trailer of the movie has been viewed, I can't remember, I think it's over 1 million times, something like that. And it is inspiring a lot of very young African-American girls, 3, 4, 5 years old, to see this Black mermaid, okay? But it's drawing a lot of criticism and a lot of hatred from white supremacists online. So we'll discuss that. I'm going to play part 2. Now, also, I posted an article a few days ago dealing with Mami Wata, And Mami Wata is an African mermaid-like deity that predates the European mermaids. Okay, this is basically where this comes from. So we're going to talk about Mami Wata, the most celebrated mermaid-like deity from Africa who crossed over to the West. We'll discuss that. Also, I'll play part 2 of my interview with Professor James Small, dealing with the movie The Woman King. Also, and I looked at Box Office Mojo. I know through Friday, The Woman King has done $41 million through Friday. And that was just the first 15 days of it being out. Okay, so probably by next weekend it will exceed 50 million. And it hasn't been released worldwide yet either, like in full release worldwide. Hasn't been released worldwide yet either. There are, we'll talk about the reverse freedom rides also from 1962, in which segregationists tricked African Americans in the South into being bused to northern cities with the promise of a job and a better way of life, because this is very similar to what Ron DeSantis and Governor Greg Abbott of Texas are doing with migrants as well, using them as a political football. Then I'll be speaking on Saturday, October 8th. I'll be speaking at the Repaired Nation's 4th Annual Black Cooperative Solidarity Conference 2022. We'll have that information at our website, TheAHNShow.com, TheAHNShow.com. We'll talk about that. Also, I'll be on the Tammy Mack Business of Being Black show on Fox Soul TV on Monday, October 3rd. That's going to air on YouTube, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You listen to the African History Network show. We'll be back in a few minutes. I saw a lot of response to the Mermaid movie that comes out in 2023. You think it was out now, how much because of how much hatred it has received from a lot of white supremacists. And I read some articles on this, and there was one from ScreenRant.com. The Little Mermaid star reflects on racist backlash to Ariel casting. The Little Mermaid star reflects on racist backlash to Ariel casting. Also, there's a newer article from NBC News. Halle Bailey says seeing a black version of Ariel would have, quote, changed my whole outlook on life, end quote. Seeing a black version of Ariel would have changed my whole outlook on life. The singer takes on the role of the Little Mermaid in Disney's latest live action remake. Okay, but if we go to now, this article from NBC News came out September 22nd, 2022. Okay, so that was Thursday, September 22nd. Okay, I want to go to the piece here from the Independent first, because let me see. There's an Independent first. The little, actually, you know, we'll go to the one from NBC News first because I have it up. Let's look at this here. So Halle knows the worth of her role in the upcoming Little Mermaid adaptation. During a Q&A session posted to a YouTube account, the singer touched on the impact of her upcoming role as Ariel in Disney's live action remake of the 1989 animated classic. Okay. Now, when asked about the most significant lessons she learned while on set, Bailey expressed that self-belief played a big factor. She expressed that self-belief played a big factor. She also described the strenuous process involved in stepping into the shoes, or fin, F-I-N, of a beloved character who eventually learns how to walk and use her voice. Now, according to Bailey, she trained for 3 months. She trained for 3 months to build up her strength so she could act and sing while suspended in midair and while submerged underwater. She said, I dedicated so much time, blood, sweat, and tears went into this work for this film, she explained. In the process, I learned so much about myself. Now, still in the weeks following the release of the Little Mermaid trailer, Halle Bailey and the creators of the film received a wave of backlash in regards to her race on social media, to her being African American on social media. Okay. Now, keep in mind, the Little Mermaid, the original movie, was a cartoon. It was a white mermaid. Cartoon. The original is fictitious, people. It was a cartoon. The character in the original animated film, the titular character, the main character, was a white mermaid with red hair. Now, Bailey is African American, a factor that proved exciting and invigorating for the young audience of Disney animated films. And their videos, young African American girls, in the videos on TikTok, 3, 4, 5 years old, reacting to seeing the trailer, and they're happy to see a black mermaid. Okay, but everybody's not happy. Okay, everybody's not happy. You have this story here also from NBC News. Let's go to this one here. Just a second. This one deals with parents posting on TikTok. Okay, parents are posting TikTok videos of their black daughters getting excited about Halle Bailey in the Little Mermaid trailer. The touching responses came after a slew of backlash directed at Bailey and Disney for casting a black lead. So a lot of this also ties into, once again, the fear of the browning of America, and the fear that by the year 2043, I should say, by the year 2043, the U.S. will no longer be a majority white country. Okay. and Europeans will no longer be the majority population in the country. So, and you have, not all white people don't fear this, but you have a lot that do. Okay, you have this piece here from the Daily Beast. The racist backlash to Halle Bailey's The Little Mermaid is out of control. All right, and here's a picture of her once again as the Little Mermaid. Let's go over to this here. Let's flip over just a second. All right. Okay, so here's a picture of her here. This is a live action movie. All right. Now, in this piece from the Daily Beast from September 12th, 2022 by Allegra Frank. Okay. It says, over the weekend, Disney released the first teaser for its upcoming live action take on The Little Mermaid. The brief clip is relatively light on actual footage, but it does give us the goods, and it shows an African-American Ariel singing the iconic ballad, Part of Your World. Okay, I haven't heard the whole song. I've never seen a Little Mermaid movie. I don't know the plot of it. I don't know. I need to research it. Don't know the storyline. Never seen it. Okay, haven't wanted to see it. Be honest with you. But you know, I don't know if I'm going to see it with an African-American mermaid either, to be honest with you. But just seeing the image of a black mermaid can be inspiring for a lot of our children. Okay, not necessarily the storyline of the movie, but just seeing an image of a black mermaid. Now, it goes on to say Bailey looks and sounds great as she puts a little vocal trill on the second to last verse and rocks that familiar red mane. Sure, there's not much else going on here, just the camera tracking underwater, following Ariel as she swims through the caves and growth population in the kingdom of Atlantica. Okay, but it's a perfectly sufficient glimpse at director Rob Marshall's adaptation of the classic. Okay, so, but since announced that Bailey was playing Ariel in 2019, there has been no shortage of backlash. Much of it is tinged with racism, of course. Now, Bailey is African-American. Ariel, a fictional animated character, appears to be white in the 1989 animated film. Despite the utter irrelevance of Ariel's skin color, she's a mermaid, okay? Okay, we'll continue this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, October 2nd, 2022. And we are live. The calling number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Right before the break, we were talking about the backlash to the live action movie, The Little Mermaid, that's coming out in 2023. And the new Little Mermaid is going to be African-American, and some people don't like that. Now, there's a article from Vox.com, which also ties into an African-American character in The Lord of the Rings as well. Or a character of African descent in The Lord of the Rings. More science fiction. Okay, more science fiction. The racist backlash to The Little Mermaid and Lord of the Rings is exhausting and extremely predictable. Lord of the Rings and The Little Mermaid are just the latest targets of racist fans. Now, this is a piece from Aja Romano, September 17th, 2022. Once again, here is Halle Bailey as the Little Mermaid. Okay. And the article says 2 new adaptations of The Lord of the Rings and The Little Mermaid are prompting deep outrage and indignation among fans who are arguing that the project's increased diversity has weakened their faithfulness to the original story. Now, also remember, there was backlash to John Boyega, his character in the Star Wars franchise. Okay, like you didn't have Lando Calrissian, Billy D. Williams, okay, in the 80s, like in Empire Strikes Back. So there was backlash to African American character. There was also an Asian American character in one of the later Star Wars movies. There was backlash to that as well. Now, and what's interesting is that African people were the first people on the face of the earth, and we circumnavigated the globe. Okay, when you watch Star Wars, I think some people are confused about Star Wars. All right. And the reason why I say that is because when now I saw Star Wars when it originally came out in 1977. I saw it in the theater when it originally came out. When you watch Star Wars, when it shows the synopsis and is scrolling up the screen, right? It tells you in a galaxy far, far away a long time ago. See, with Star Wars, people think they're looking at the future, but they're really looking at the past. And the original people on the face of the earth were African people. So you shouldn't be surprised that you see African people in the past, even in other galaxies. You shouldn't be surprised, but you're dealing with white supremacy and racism. So if we look at this article here, go back to this article from Vox.com. Now, detractors of Amazon's new Lord of the Rings series, which I don't watch. A lot of this science fiction, a lot of this stuff, Lord of the Rings and what was that? Game of Thrones, all that. I don't have time to watch stuff like that. The closest I come to fiction like that is Godfather of Harlem. Okay. and that's based, it starts out in 1963 in Harlem, and it deals with some real life people. Okay. All the science fiction and sorcerers and stuff, I don't have time for that. But anyway, detractors of Amazon's new Lord of the Rings series, which debuted this month in September 2022, claimed that casting Black and Asian actors undermines the show's faithfulness to Tolkien's world. TOLKIN''S. Now, meanwhile, some ostensible fans of Disney's animated Little Mermaid are rejecting the new live action version for swapping out the main character mermaid's famous blue eyes and red hair for the features of African American actress Halle Bailey. The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, first drew widespread anger from fans because it cast Black and Asian actors as characters across the spectrum of fictional Middle Earth races. Now, fans' chief complaint was that the decision to include non-white characters had ruined the authenticity of Tolkien's world because he had never described his elves, hobbits, men, and dwarfs as anything other than white people. It's make-believe. It's science fiction. It's not real. Get over it. I mean, come, some people have way too much time on their hands. Then last week, now this is in around mid-September 2022. Okay. Then last week, Disney released the first trailer for The Little Mermaid. Okay. Now thousands and Halle Bailey was singing Part of Your World, which is a famous song from A Little Mermaid. And I've never heard the whole song before. Okay. I'm just telling you. All right. Now thousands of YouTube users brigaded, leaving more than 2 million dislikes on the trailer, more than 2 million dislikes on the trailer, and countless derogatory comments on the trailer, and creating memes ridiculing the film for casting Bailey and mocking all of its supporters. So these white supremacists just lost their minds. Okay, Donald Trump lost the election, and white supremacists lost their minds. To anyone who's paid any attention to geek culture over the past decade or so, and I haven't, these arguments probably feel endless and exhausting. After all, this is the same cycle of backlash that plays out when any beloved story gets rebooted, or in the case of Tolkien's Silmarillion, Silmarillion. Okay, I don't know what that is. I know what Wakanda is. I know what vibranium is. This stuff, Lord of the Rings, I had no idea what the hell this stuff is. Okay. Now I deal with some science fiction and Afrofuturism dealing with Black Panther. Because I'll be in the theater November 11th for Black Panther. This stuff here, I don't know what this is. Now, but it was adapted to film for the first time and makes any changes big or small. Now the anger intensifies to a new level when there are big changes that shake the foundations of a story that was originally framed within a white male worldview. That was originally framed in a white male worldview. So once again, this is certain people feeling like they're losing power and their ability to define and shape reality that other people see is being challenged. Okay, most of the stories that have been passed down to us throughout the centuries have been created for us by white men. They're absolutely correct. Okay, so read the rest of this article here. This is from Vox.com. The racist backlash to The Little Mermaid and Lord of the Rings is exhausting and extremely predictable. Okay, we're gonna go to clip number one. Giovanni from Roland Martin Unfiltered. Okay, and we're gonna start that at the 2:29 mark. Let's go to clip number one, please. We talked about The Little Mermaid on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
With the positive news, there is negative. Here are some of the folks that are upset that Disney cast a Black woman to play a mermaid. We have Kaiser, who says The Little Mermaid is a traditional Danish tale, 100% European culture. Stop stealing others, like Pinocchio Italian, Lord of the Rings British, even Game of Thrones is based on European. In fact, 98% of Disney classics are stolen European stories. This is so stupid. Anyway, so Matt Walsh says it isn't scientific to have a Black mermaid.
All right, Max Winter says, a Black actor playing the Little Mermaid really is a case of white erasure. All forms of art, including fairy tales, are meant to be reflections of the author's experiences and observations. Hans Christian Andersen probably based the Little Mermaid based on experiences he went through in his home country of Denmark. So it makes sense that most of his characters would be white, since that's the world and the people he was surrounded by. Yeah, I'm given the way that we deal with these sorts of issues, I'm sympathetic to that. Now, I would be fine, like we talked about yesterday. We don't have to rehash the entire thing. But if we all agreed that race in films and TV shows, especially fictional stories, don't matter, and we're going to take a kind of colorblind casting approach, and it doesn't matter as long as the actor is good. If we could all agree on that, then I'd be on board. And as I said, that's basically what it was for many years, what it was back in the 90s. But what I cannot abide by is the double standard thing where we say, well, in casting matters only for certain races and not for others. No, we're not doing that. Also, by the way, with The Little Mermaid, can we also just mention that just from a scientific perspective, okay, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have someone with darker skin who lives deep in the ocean. I mean, if anything, not only should the Little Mermaid be pale, she should actually be translucent. If you look at deep sea creatures, they're like translucent. They have no kind of pigmentation whatsoever. And they're just like these horrifying, they look like skeletons floating around in the ocean. That's what the Little Mermaid should look like. She should be totally pale and skeletal, where you can see her skull through her face. And that would actually be a version of Little Mermaid that I would watch.
That's embarrassing.
Freak. I bet it is, you freak.
I mean, look.
Girl in the bottom of the ocean. I bet he would watch that.
Well, I mean, if we're being scientific, didn't y'all come out the Caucasus Mountain? Or no, y'all ain't from the ocean too, last I checked. Okay.
Look, but the Danes were still trying to figure out how to cook food when Yemaya and Oshun were coming out the ocean and the river. So let's be clear. You don't know, and I like what Mike Harriet said. He said mermaids are by definition biracial. But let's be clear. We ain't got no dog in this fight. Y'all remember Blazing Saddles when Cleavon Little showed up in town and it was like, the sheriff is near, the sheriff is near. Then he got close and they saw he was black. The sheriff isn't. When she came up out there water, I'm like, y'all should just make this a satire. Because I ain't got to. Disney is trying to make all the money in the world. They got a Muslim Miss Marvel from the comic books from Pakistan. They're gonna make Namor the Submariner Latinx when everybody who reads the comics knows he is white as the sheet. Shang-Chi is Chinese. His Shuri may be the Black Panther, may not be the Black Panther. And they're gonna put this Israeli girl in the new Captain America and is setting off bells over there with the Palestinians. Disney trying to make that cash. The reason that girl is black is because they see the demographic, and the most important words to be heard is when these children said, "I can't wait to go."
Oh yeah,
that's right. I mean, that's all Disney care about. So the mermaid is here.
I get the anti-capitalism aspect of it, but as a mother of an 18-month-old, almost 18-month-old, I have to tell you, when there's this little show on Disney called Eureka. And it's a brown girl in prehistoric times, and she has purple kind of, hair, and it's really funky. And Ava just goes apeshit every time it comes on. I mean, she's like looking at me, and she's like, and she starts dancing and swinging around. And I mean, it brings so much joy to her.
It doesn't scare you, Reese?
Does it scare
I used to have my godson in the back seat, and every time Barney come on, he go into a trance. I don't let no kids watch anything that these corporate people program, because it's like, wait a minute, how the hell you're a child? I don't trust that.
Well, listen, there's probably as much crack in Disney stuff as Beyonce has in her Renaissance album, so we're all in the same boat of being transfixed with things.
No question.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation. All right. We're going to go back to this clip here in just a second. Giovanni, we're going to start that clip at the 5-minute mark. Okay. From Roland Martin Unfiltered. And I want to remind you all, you can still register for the online history classes that I teach on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have new classes that started up in September. Okay. On Tuesdays, I teach from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And on Thursdays, I teach ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Visit our new website, TheAHNShow.com, TheAHNShow.com. And we have the information right on the homepage of the website. Classes are on sale $80, regularly $130. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. So our next class is Thursday, October 6th, 2022, 7 p.m. Okay. So if you miss it, it's not a problem. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. So a year from now, 2 years from now, you'll still have access to the full class. All right. I want to go back to this clip here. Now, this is from Roland Martin Unfiltered from Thursday, September 15th. Normally, I'm on Fridays. A panel is on Fridays for the past 2 years. But they didn't do a show Friday, I think it was, so I ended up being on Thursday. We were talking about the backlash the new Little Mermaid live action movie is getting, and it's coming out in 2023. You would think the movie is out now, as much backlash as it's getting. And the new mermaid is African American, and this is really infuriating a lot of Europeans, a lot of white people. We're gonna pick this up at the 5-minute mark. That clip from Roland Martin and the Filter. Let's go back to this clip, Giovanni.
So, I mean, for me, I just part of the fun of it is starting to be how just completely unhinged these people are about it. Like, I didn't have interest in the Game of Thrones prequel. I have not watched Game of Thrones. But now I'm like, well, let me check it out, because this black guy is pissing them off. Or the Lord of the Rings thing they have going on. They're mad about the black people. Like, these are not real characters. Y'all already don't see black people as human anyway, so it should be less of a stretch to see black people play a half mermaid, half whatever.
Well, yeah, with the Lord of the Rings and these other fictitious science fiction things like this. First of all, they act like they never heard the African Moors that went all throughout Europe, intermixed into the European population and changed the complexion of many Europeans. Number one. Number two, I remember back in 2015 on the History Channel, they had a series called Barbarians Rising. And it dealt with like 700 years of invasions of the Roman Empire. And the first episode dealt with Hannibal Barca, Hannibal of Carthage, and the Carthaginians and the Punic Wars. And they portrayed Hannibal as an African, which he was. These the Carthaginians, descendants of the Phoenicians. And some white people lost their minds. And it wasn't a brother like you had to look there and look at him for 5 minutes and listen to the tonality of his voice to determine if he was African descent. No, Nicholas Pinnock, you can look at that brother. That's a brother right there with a thick black beard. Okay, so they were correct. A lot of white people lost their minds. This ties into white fear. This ties into Roland's book. Yeah. They're seeing these demographic changes here in the country, and not all white people, but these people that voted for Trump. They see these demographic changes in the country, and they can't handle it. And then they go to their escape. They go to their escape, which is science fiction. They go to their escape, which is a Disney movie, and then Negroes in the Disney movie. They're gonna have an Andy Griffith marathon because there's no black people in Mayberry. They keep trying to go to their escapes, right? And we keep popping up. So. And then you look at the YouTube, the trailer on YouTube has 1.5 million dislikes, things like this. So a lot of these people have just totally lost their minds. They just totally lost their minds. So
look at I'm sorry, look at it though. They're gonna make that money up in the Spanish market. Disney is global. This movie, these hillbillies in the United States ain't gonna stop this train. They're gonna make that money up in Latin America.
Oh yeah, they're gonna make it. African Americans go see it. And I understand. My daughter's 5 years old. And I watched the whole thing of the little girl's reaction to it. I'm glad I saw it before here because it brought tears to my eyes. Here, my daughter's 5 years old, right? My daughter loves Paw Patrol. She likes Sesame Street. She likes Doc McStuffins, things like this. So we need to flip this and like do lectures dealing with like the origins of the mermaids and where all this stuff comes from, things like this as well. But this is just the reaction from many Europeans is just, you don't have anything better to do than this?
No.
The attack Halle Bailey, you don't have anything better to do than this? So. And
I have to say, Halle Bailey, I met her at the VP's residence and for Juneteenth, and she's so she's like a mermaid in person. Like, she's just so lovely and sweet, and she has this just really divine voice and this great energy. So I love that for her. I love that for little black girls and everybody. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't let my kid watch like the super white cartoons like Coco Melon. I'm like, everybody got green eyes, blue eyes, everybody's super white. I'm like, where are the black cartoons? So she watches, Motown Magic. I'll let her watch The Animals, so she does Word Party, other kind of stuff. But I'm happy that there are a lot of shows for her to watch. Don't judge me, or you can, I don't care. But I know a lot of people don't like their kids watching TV. But
God for Nollywood, because somebody got to tell our stories that we have. Disney is not for us. Disney out there trying to make money.
No,
so
I understand.
Thank God for the African film market, because at some point, when we get our act together, the American Negro gonna be sitting somewhere with our $5 in our hand, talking about. Anyway,
Well, that's true. That's
the
true.
African market, things like that. But what I think also it's important for us to do, and you may want to weigh in this, Greg, if we had time. These white supremacists are largely attacking this African American woman.
Mm-hmm.
Halle Bailey.
No question.
That's what I'm saying. So I don't want that to be lost in this whole Disney movie. Mm-hmm. Okay, because she talked about, I was reading an article from Screen Rant where she talked about her grandparents encouraging her. I think it was her grandparents encouraging her in dealing with these white supremacists and these attacks on social media, things like that. So that's a layer that I don't want to be lost in the white capitalism, the corporations, and things like this.
I don't know what to tell you.
Dr. Carr is like, hey, that's what you signed up for.
I don't know what to. At some point, we're going to have to make some decisions, or some decisions are going to be made for us. So this diversity, equity, inclusion approach to liberation, of course, is a complete and utter dead end. So yes, she should be defended. We have to deal with that.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
But let's be very clear. As you said, Reese, if you have power, use it. Mm-hmm. So we shouldn't be the ones defending her. Disney needs to have all the smoke for every white supremacist that they have contributed to their political campaign.
Yeah.
That they have emboldened. In other words, this is not our fight. This is Disney fight. Because Disney getting ready to pimp the black community for another $2 billion, like they did Black Panther. So when these white boys come for her, it don't need to be us. Yeah, we should say, but it need to be Disney. And Disney's not going to do that. Why? Because Disney don't give a damn about her either. This is all, you know what I'm saying? I mean, so I don't know. I don't have an answer other than you got to have your own stuff. We make our own documentary, and we've done this.
Right.
We've done this.
Right.
But
that's
I mean,
going back to Oscar Micheaux, going back in the early 1900s.
But at the same time,
we had race movies. When we had race movies.
Well, we got Gracie's Corner on YouTube. We got our own stuff. Corner. But guess what?
Disney.
When it comes to a kid and cartoons.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm Team Disney on that one. I know, Dr. Carr, you can drag me, I am Team Disney. Dr. Nichols, you're shaking your head. Go ahead. What you got?
Yeah, let me get a word in. I have a 3-year-old myself, and I understand my 3-year-old loves Peppa Pig. So she's sitting around here walking around talking like a British person. So. I will say this. I think it's important, and this was kind of stated, but I think it's important for us to make cartoons for our kids.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You better believe Matt Walsh, who you just showed, who I think was trying to be funny with that whole translucent thing, but he's not funny.
No.
But at any rate, Matt Walsh works for the Daily Wire. The Daily Wire
white supremacists
wants to get out of political content and get into cultural stuff. They want to make movies. They want to make cartoons because they realize that some black kid probably too is going to be looking and see a cartoon that engages them, but is secretly giving them political messages. Mm-hmm. It hurt my heart. One of the things that hurt my heart so much about, I don't even like saying his name, but a guy from Philadelphia, who, he made Fat Albert. And that was so important for kids my age. That was so important for us to see a bunch of black kids who lived in urban communities and how great that was. And then, conversely, I remember as a kid when I was young, you saw He-Man. And this is what tripped me out. My boy pointed this out to me. Here you have this white, blonde-haired, muscular guy, and he's the master of the universe. I was like, hide it from us. You know what I mean? And then, of course, G.I. Joe was trying to get us all to join the military. So, again, they're sending our children messages through this kind of stuff. And it's cool when you have a Doc McStuffins. And it's, The Little Mermaid, I think some of that story, just like Beauty and the Beast, I wouldn't let my daughter see it because I think it, tells them it's okay, deal with somebody's abuse. I wouldn't let them see it. I think it sends the wrong message to little girls. that you just be patient with somebody while they abuse you. I think it's important for us to make the kinds of stories we want to see instead of advocating and saying, hey, big capitalist white company, please please show me, please take the same recycled story that we've seen 100 million times and do it over again, rather than when we've got so many great Black children's authors who could, their stories could be made into cartoons, and you can't even tell me that you need a big corporation. My kids used to watch this guy named Blippi. I don't know if you've ever seen him.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Absolutely.
And he's a random dude who was going nowhere with his life, and he just put on a colored hat and started playing with toys outside his apartment in the dirt and filmed it. And now he makes $20 million a year making children's content. He doesn't even like kids. He said it in an interview. He's like, I don't even like kids.
Wow.
But he has been able to monetize this, and kids can't take their eyes off of him. And now he's got a cartoon. He's got his live action stuff. And I think we can do the same things. Just like the stuff Roland is doing. I'll give props to Roland for a second. The stuff Roland's doing by trying to, I read he was promoting HBCU sports and all of that, going into sports content. I want him to hire me because I have the best sports commentary in the world. I'm always right. But I think that we need to expand into children's material, because guess what? That's when they're trying to get our kids when they're young, and give them subtle messages, about what they want from us.
Yes, right. Turn Mami Wata loose. Let them Negroes from the Caribbean and West Africa. Ain't no mermaids in the African women been in the water since the beginning of water. And that's a whole different story. But that whole weak woman, princess, that's how you end up with Queen Elizabeth is dead, and the Star of Africa in her scepter, the largest diamond in the world. In other words, that whole women are weak. The whole cultural model is anti-human. It's not even good for white people. So no, you're right. I agree with you, Doc. I don't know about letting any children look at this patriarchal stuff. The Little Mermaid.
And just very quickly, when you look at the origin of a lot of these stories we tell our children, Cinderella, Snow White, King Midas, Rumpelstiltskin, things like this, they originate in England. Okay, so they orientate our children to kings and queens and Europeans being in power, Europeans being in control.
And to murder. Humpty Dumpty and Humpty Dumpty is about a plot against the king. Rockabye Baby is about killing the next heir. In the treetop, the baby, down will come cradle baby and all. In other words, these people talking about murder, and it's all in their children's stories.
910 AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media. The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media. We got the topics.
I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the After History Network Show. We do recurring events of history and much, much more. We're going to give you an update on what's going on. This is about self-preservation. We have to extinguish the fire of white supremacy. See, let's just have consequences.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network Show. All right. We had some technical difficulties before the break. I want to go to this second clip here in just a second. This is dealing with, we were talking about The Little Mermaid on Roland Martin Unfiltered, and we were also talking about Lord of the Rings. And then we got into a discussion dealing with Dr. Greg Carr and I, we got into a discussion also dealing with a lot of the children's stories, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Jack and the Beanstalk, things like this, Cinderella. These are stories that come from England. And a lot of these stories had a very violent nature to them. And the violent nature was toned down, so it could be told really as children's stories. And then those stories were brought here because, the 13 colonies, these were English colonies. Then they were brought here, and we continue to teach these stories to our children. We had that discussion as well. Okay, so I want to go back to this segment from September 15, 2022, Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go back to this clip, please, Giovanni. Thank you.
So, no.
And just very quickly, when you look at the origin of a lot of these stories we tell our children, Cinderella, Snow White, King Midas, Rumpelstiltskin, things like this, they originate in England. Okay, so they orientate our children to kings and queens and Europeans being in power, Europeans being in control.
Murder, Mike. And to murder. Humpty Dumpty and Humpty Dumpty is about a plot against the king. Rockabye Baby is about killing the next heir. In the treetop, the baby down will come cradle baby and all. In other words, these people talking about murder, and it's all in their children's stories.
And of course,
our children's stories had a violent nature to them, and they were toned down.
No,
and then they were brought here, and then they were toned down and fed to the children, but we feed it to our children.
You know, I needed another mom on this panel with me because I'm outnumbered here. I'm the only one.
No, we're not beating up on you.
No. I'm just saying. Listen, I guess I'm the unserious one because I can't wait for this, and I love Halle. But let me close it out with this tweet, which I thought was hilarious. It says, "So after all the Africans y'all threw in the ocean, y'all surprised a mermaid is black?"
Lord have mercy.
Listen.
Incredible.
Come on, that one.
Come on, we got to keep the same energy, y'all. Y'all want us? What we doing?
Welcome back to the African History Network show. All right, right here on 910 AM, the Superstation. Okay, right before the break, we was listening to this clip here from when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered from Thursday, September 15th, 2022. We were discussing The Little Mermaid. We talked about an African-American character in Lord of the Rings. And then we started talking about how a lot of children's stories that we teach our children, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Cinderella, Jack and the Beanstalk, Fee, Fi, Fo, Fum, I Smell the Blood of an Englishman, things like this come from England. And they orientate our children toward European culture, toward Europeans being in power, toward Europeans being rulers, kings and queens and things like this. They orientate them towards that at a very young age. And how a lot of these stories have a very violent nature to them. And that violent nature was toned down to really be taught to children, especially when these Anglos and Saxons, who were two groups of Germanic people, the Anglos and Saxons, and England is named after the Anglos, when they come to this land and start setting up colonies, starting with Virginia in 1607, they bring those stories here, and then African Americans learn those stories, and then we teach them to our children. So that was a really, really good segment from Roland Martin Unfiltered. Now, I want to go to, I saw some articles dealing with this before. Then we're going to talk about Mami Wata, who was the original mermaid, Mami Wata, okay, coming out of African mythology. So this article here from list25.com, list25.com, is 25 dark and disturbing original versions of children's fairy tales. 25 dark and disturbing original versions of children's fairy tales. And it deals with what Dr. Greg Carr and I were just talking about, okay? How a lot of these stories had a very violent nature to them. And if we look at now, this is from November 12, 2021. And it says, these stories aren't your happy endings, but rather sometimes gruesome and shocking tales. Fairy tales used to be stories aimed at both adult and child alike, and the grown-up themes they portray is good evidence of that. The grown-up themes they portray is good evidence of that. We dug deep with this list to find where our common stories come from and what the original dark, very dark stories really were. And there's a few different articles. I was researching this some years ago. That's how I know about it. Okay. And I read a few articles a few years ago dealing with this. So this is how I knew, about this and some of the history of these stories. So they go through and deal with different stories. First, they deal with Sleeping Beauty. Italian Giambattista Basile's or Giambattista Basile's version of Sleeping Beauty is really dark. The king who finds the girl rapes her while she's asleep. She later on gives birth while asleep and is awakened only because one of the kids sucks out a splinter under her finger, which was keeping her asleep. The king later kills his wife, who tried to get him to unknowingly eat the children to be with Sleeping Beauty. This is the original Sleeping Beauty before it was toned down and the violence was toned down in it. Then you have Pinocchio. Okay. So the original Pinocchio story wasn't the nice little story, the cartoon and the cricket and Geppetto and Pinocchio. The original story in Carl Collodi's, Collodi, Collodi's original version. Once Geppetto carves Pinocchio, the marionette runs away. The wooden boy Pinocchio runs away. He's caught by the police, who assume Geppetto abused him, and they imprison the puppet maker Geppetto. Pinocchio goes back to Geppetto's house that night and accidentally kills the wise talking cricket. He later gets hung from a tree and suffocates. So when you go study these stories that we teach our children that come from Europeans, many of them have a very violent nature to them, and that nature is toned down, but a lot of European cultural residue is still there. Okay. They talk about Peter Pan as well. Then they talk about the Three Little Pigs. Okay. Some versions of this English tale have the wolf eating the first and second piggies after he blows their weak straw and stick houses down. Then they have the Little Mermaid. They talk about the Little Mermaid also. Okay. Hans Christian Andersen. And when I was a kid, we ain't know any better. And a lot of our parents didn't know any better. None of our parents meant well, but a lot of them didn't know any better. So we read Hans Christian Andersen, and we read Hansel and Gretel. We read all the little white stories. They taught us in kindergarten and first grade, all that stuff, all that indoctrination. Okay. Hans Christian Andersen's original story has the newly legged mermaid walking but in excruciating pain with every step. If the prince married someone else, she would die and turn into sea foam. Spoiler alert, the prince married another. In an attempt to save their kin, the mermaid's sister traded their hair for a dagger from the sea witch. If the mermaid killed the prince with it and drips his blood onto her feet, she would return to being a mermaid. Okay. And she did not kill him. Okay, this is in the original Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen. So they go through, they talk about Aladdin, they talk about the Ugly Duckling, things like this. Okay, the Frog and the Prince. They do with that. Alice in Wonderland. There was just an Alice in Wonderland quest in downtown Detroit. I saw it. All these people. Most of them were not African American, dressed up as characters from Alice in Wonderland. I'm like, what the hell is this? I said, it's too early for Halloween. Lewis Carroll was the person who created Alice in Wonderland. Lewis Carroll's version is odd throughout, including Alice finding a caterpillar smoking a hookah on a mushroom, as well as her leaving the tea party ticked off at all the riddles and calling it the stupidest tea party she ever attended. Then you have Beauty and the Beast. Okay, now Jean Marie LaPrence, or John Marie LaPrence Beaumont's Beauty and the Beast features Belle's poor father first finding the mysterious castle and plucking a rose for his daughter. The Beast emerges angry that after the food and drink he consumed, he also takes the rose. The Beast allows him to take it if he returns, but Belle forces the story out of her father and goes to the castle. She stays there, and the Beast continuously asks her to marry him. She keeps saying no until she finds him nearly dead from heartbreak. Her tears over his body finally turn him into a prince. I never saw the Beauty and the Beast. Then we get to Cinderella. Now, all of us saw Cinderella. We saw Cinderella when we were kids, and I had the book of all the Walt Disney, all the popular Walt Disney stories. In Brothers Grimm version, the Brothers Grimm, this is who created Cinderella. Most of these people, we don't know none of these people, right? This is just fed to us. In Brothers Grimm version, Cinderella's eldest sister, in an attempt to fit into the glass shoe, golden slipper in the story, cuts off her toes. This is in the original story of Cinderella. The second sister cuts off her heel, the heel of her foot, not the shoe, the heel of her foot. In both cases, two doves sent by Cinderella's dead mother alert the prince of the sister's blood in the slippers. Though Cinderella was finally found to be the true owner of the slipper, during her wedding to the prince, the doves return and poke her older sister's eyes out. These are the original stories coming out of European culture. We'll deal with this on the other side of the break, and then we'll talk about Mami Wata, who was the original mermaid, and she was African. You listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. The battle for the African mind. Dr. Jacob Carruthers, who was an ancestor, now one of our great scholar warriors, he said it doesn't matter how many white people we convince. He said this is a battle for the African mind. So this is what we have to understand. Your thoughts create feelings. Your feelings create actions and behaviors. Your actions and behaviors create results. So as Bantu Stephen Biko, one of our great South African freedom fighters who was portrayed by Denzel Washington in the 1987 movie Cry Freedom, said, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. We must take our minds back.
There it is. Brother Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network podcast show. You can find all of the great work he's doing at the African History Network.com. Yep. And Brother Michael, I truly appreciate you, brother, for coming on and being a part of the discussion.
And check us out there, because we have my online classes Saturdays and Sundays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, online history classes. So you can register for them there. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. Saturdays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Egypt, one of the original names for Kemet. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade. And then Sundays, Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. So we get deep into this history, and the information is PG-13 as well. It's very visual. There's about 180 articles we reference between the two classes, over 250 slides, video clips, etc. I'm a historian, put together the curriculum for both of these classes, TheAHNShow.com.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Brother Michael. Truly appreciate you, brother.
All right, Brother Faraji. I want to go to this article here from face-to-faceafrica.com. Face-to-faceafrica.com. This deals with Mami Wata. Mami Wata, the most celebrated mermaid-like deity from Africa, who crossed over to the West. Mami Wata. This is who Dr. Greg Carr was talking about. Mami Wata, M-A-M-I. Mami Wata, W-A-T-A, the most celebrated mermaid-like deity from Africa who crossed over to the West. This is from July 20th, 2018. Now, I posted an article about this on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, a couple of weeks ago. And when I posted the article, I said, let me see, I talked about Halle Bailey as the Little Mermaid. And I said, people don't realize, I said, having African-American actress Halle Bailey play the Little Mermaid is more accurate than many of the haters think. It's more accurate than many of the haters think. Now, here's a depiction of Mami Wata right here. And the article says, despite being considered an adaptation of the Western mermaid, Mami Wata is a deity in Africa for as long as African history and culture can recollect. For as long as African history and culture can recollect. The half fish, half human female water spirit is the half fish, half human female water spirit is highly respected, feared, and worshipped, presenting a balance between dark, divine, mysterious, and angelic existence. Presenting a balance between dark, divine, mysterious, and angelic existence. Now, the deity of Mami Wata is believed to be a woman with a half human and half fish appearance, with the ability to transform wholly, W-H-O-L-L-Y, wholly, into any form of her choice. Now, the deity could also take up the form of half human, half snake. Her upper body is that of a woman, while her lower body is a fish with a tail. Okay, just like a mermaid. Her upper body is that of a woman, and her lower body is a fish with a tail. Now, Mami Wata is often presented with long, healthy hair, enviable beauty, and a dark yet appealing mysteriousness. Her human features appear similar to that of the women in the areas in which she is. Now, here's another depiction of Mami Wata, and she has dreadlocks here, locks, okay, in this depiction. And you see that her lower body is that of a fish. Now, Mami Wata traces back to the earliest of African societies recorded by the griots and keepers of history. The Dogon's creation, and the Dogon are in Mali and Burkina Faso, but the Dogon originally come from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. The Dogon's creation myth tells the stories of Mami Wata and traces records of its existence to more than 4,000 years ago. Mesopotamian myths also tell of the great water goddess in their story of creation known as Mami Aru, A-R-U-R-U, to be the creator of life. Now, the name is traced to the early languages of many modern African societies. The first root of its name is considered to be from Ethiopian and Egyptian Coptic societies. In the Egyptian Coptic language, the word mama, M-A-M-A, was used as a description of truth and wisdom, and the term Uat-ur, U-A-T-U-R, meant ocean water, Now, another definition of the name traces to the early Sudanese society in Sudan, and we know the upper portion of Sudan and the lower portion of Egypt used to be Nubia or Ta-Nehisi. Another definition of the name traces to the early Sudanese society, where the word Wata, W-A-T-A, referred to a woman. The name is often linked to a single entity, but represents the strongest and most significant of all water spirit that exists. Now, I know our kids like Disney and all this stuff, but I'll take Mami Wata, which reconnects us to African history and culture and language. I'll take that over any of this Snow White and the Seven Dudes and the Little Mermaid and Three Little Pigs and Cinderella and Pinocchio, all this European English nonsense. When we reconnect to African folklore and African mythology and things like this, we are taking our minds back. Power is the ability to define and shape reality and have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. So these all these European fairy tales, okay, help to orientate our children to Europeans being in power, because we see the prince and the kings and all this in there in England, okay, and we see them ruling. Then you have the Princess and the Frog. Oh, I gotta dissect this frog here. A few years ago, in the presentation that I do, The Media's Deliberate Destruction of the African American Family, I break down The Princess and the Frog. Let me take 2 minutes to break this down. Okay, so Princess Tiana, I think was her name, the frog. Now, it's okay to have an African American princess. The story of the Princess and the Frog was programming. Okay, so she ends up with Prince Naveen, who's this European, Eurasian looking prince. She don't end up with somebody that looks like her. Her father dies early in the movie. It's a cartoon, dies early in the movie. He can't protect her. The only other significant African-American character is the voodoo priest, and he's evil. And by them making him a voodoo priest, they then attack African spirituality. But it was Vodun that the Haitians used to reclaim their African spirituality, cast aside their white god. They reclaimed Vodun, which helped them defeat the French during the Haitian Revolution. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. This is the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Greetings. Welcome to the 2022 Black Solidarity Cooperative Conference hosted by Repair Nations. We're looking to bring an all virtual conference to you this year with different cooperative actions happening around the African diaspora. This is a theme conference, and the theme is I versus we, how to repair a nation. Around the theme, we're looking to offer education around travel around the African diaspora, how to fund your cooperative, and also how to get into a collective versus an individual mindset of working together. This conference will be hosted on Saturday, October the 8th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we're looking for a $5 to $20 suggested donation, but no donation is required to come in. Please come out and support us on this day as we bring together different cooperatives and collectives with education. And we hope to see you at the 2022 Cooperative Solidarity Conference with Repair Nations.
Hello, African History Network family. You've put it off for way too long. Now it's time to act for your family, your future, and the next generation. Get life insurance for that peace of mind and security for you and your loved ones. Build your financial foundations starting today. Your independent agent at Fortified Trust Life Brokers, with over a dozen strong A-rated life insurance companies to offer you the life protection you need when it comes to final expense, term life, whole life, mortgage protection, annuities, and more. They are currently licensed in Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. Don't let a pre-existing health condition hinder you from getting life insurance. You can get the affordable coverage you need today. Life insurance is only the beginning. Email them at Fortified Trust Life for a free fact sheet explaining the 5 basic building blocks for a strong financial foundation. It's their gift to you to help you fortify your future. Email them at fortifytl 828@yahoo.com or call them at 706-339-5096 and leave a message. Fortify your future today. Saturday, October 8th, 2022, the Repaired Nations 4th Annual Conference is coming up. And this deals with cooperative economics, learning how to actually utilize cooperative economics. This is the Repaired Nations 4th Annual Black Cooperative Solidarity Conference. It's taking place 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Those in Detroit, those on the East Coast, we're Eastern Standard Time, okay? Visit their website, repairednations.org. We're going to get the information up at our website, TheAHNShow.com. We'll have that up on Monday. I will be one of the presenters at the virtual conference as well. I'll be doing a presentation dealing with the history of African-American cooperatives and how we use cooperatives to empower ourselves economically. Okay. Let's go to this clip, please. Here's the official commercial. Here's the official announcement of the conference. Let's go to this clip, please.
Greetings. Welcome to the 2022 Black Solidarity Cooperative Conference hosted by Repaired Nations. We're looking to bring an all virtual conference to you this year with different cooperative action happening around the African diaspora. This is a theme conference, and the theme is I versus we, how to repair a nation. Around the theme, we're looking to offer an education around travel around the African diaspora, how to fund your cooperative, and also how to get into a collective versus an individual mindset of working together. This conference will be hosted on Saturday, October the 8th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we're looking for a $5 to $20 suggested donation, but no donation is required to come in. Please come out and support us on this day as we bring together different cooperatives and collectives with education. And we hope to see you at the 2022 Cooperative Solidarity Conference with Repaired Nations.
Hope to see everybody there at the virtual conference. Once again, okay, so somebody asked, how do you register? We'll put the website up again. Visit repairednations.org, REPAIRED, repairednations.org. You can register there. Suggested donation is between $5 to $20. If for people who are not able to do that, you can still register. They're not turning people away. Okay, so if you can support them, because they've been working, they contacted me a few months ago to speak at the conference. All right, so I'll be speaking. I don't know my exact time. I'll post that on our website, TheAHNShow.com as well. But I'll be speaking at the conference. You don't want to miss my presentation. Okay, let's go back to the story here dealing with the article from face-to-faceafrica.com dealing with Mami Wata. Now, this deals with African culture, ties into African language, etc., African history, okay, as opposed to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and the Princess and the Frog and all types of things like this. I was talking about the Princess and the Frog right before the break. And you have that piece, that story is a lot of propaganda, okay? You have Princess Tiana, who's now keep in mind, this was the first African-American princess, right? First African-American princess in a Disney movie. And this is what Disney does. And let me see, can we get a picture of it here? So the only other significant African-American character besides her father, right, is the voodoo priest. He's evil and he's the enemy. Okay, he's evil and he's the enemy. Her savior is Prince Naveen. Now, Prince Naveen is this Eurasian, white-looking prince. Okay, and she ends up, marrying him at the end. They go live off happily ever after, something like that. They go live happily ever after. And by making the voodoo priest, by making him the villain, what they do is they show African American men, African men as being evil, but also they attack African spirituality, because voodoo is Vodun, and it comes from the foe of Dahomey is Vodun. It's in Haiti, but it was in Africa before it was in Haiti. It was in Dahomey amongst the foe people before it was in Haiti. Okay, and it's also related to Ifa as well, which is the spiritual tradition of the Europe. Okay, it's portrayed in movies and things like this as being evil, but in its essence, it's not evil. Anything can be used in an evil way, but in its essence, it's not evil. So when they attack Vodun, they attack African spirituality. Now, it was Vodun that the Haitians used to help them defeat the French during the Haitian Revolution, and they defeat the French, and it was the French and the British and one other European nation that were allies, and it helped them to defeat these Europeans. And they threw away their white god and reclaimed their African spirituality. So when we see the Princess and the Frog, we see all this being attacked in the cartoon from Disney. All right. So if you got the Princess and the Frog, you may want to rethink showing that to our children, especially the Spanish, the French, the British, the French and the Spanish. They were all allies in the Haitian Revolution. I was thinking Spanish, but yeah. And then we know that the Haitian Revolution is going to be one of the driving forces behind the Louisiana Purchase as well. France selling 828,000 square miles of land for less than 3 cents an acre to the U.S. Okay, let's go back to Mami Wata. Now, Mami Wata was developed from the African culture that believed in the existence and worship of mystical creatures. Mami Wata is the bigger goddess with smaller followers, some of which were also men and had the same appearance as their goddess. Stories are told of her followers coming to shore every now and then to deceive seamen and capture them to be taken in the water kingdom. The captives were a source of entertainment until they were offered as sacrifices to her. Okay, those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching for a few more minutes. We'll keep going, and we're out of time here on 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. Right now, it's correct wrong behaviors, not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Visit our website, TheAHNShow.com. We'll talk to you next time. Peace. All right. Okay, stand by. I had to disconnect that call. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so Mami Wata was developed from the African culture that believed in the existence and worship of mystical creatures. Okay. Now, in West Africa and some parts of Eastern Africa, the deity is called Mami Wata, or I'm not sure how to pronounce it, M-A-M-E Wata, Mami Wata. Okay. Modern African societies refer to her as Mami Wata or Mami Wata. In some parts of Eastern Africa, among the Swahili-speaking groups, she is called Mamba Munti, M-U-N-T-I, Mamba, M-A-M-B-A, Mamba, like Black Mamba, Kobe Bryant, Mamba Munti. The African deity has managed to find homes in many other societies in the Western world. In the Caribbean, In parts of Southern America, the deity is highly respected. Okay. In the Caribbean and parts of Southern America, the deity is highly respected and feared, with many stories around her identity. Many cultures to this day, worship the deity and train high priestesses who serve as a link between the people and the deity. Okay. Now, the role of Mami Wata, the role of the strikingly beautiful goddess, is to provide spiritual and material healing to her worshipers, while also protecting their emotional and mental health and growth. She is the protector of the water bodies. She is the protector of the water bodies. Many traditional groups in Africa till today do not go to the beach or fish on certain days in order to provide peace to the water deity's home. For women, she is a giver of fertility and protector of women and children. Mami Wata has a soft spot for women who have suffered abuse. Mami Wata has a soft spot for women who have suffered abuse. The deity is also a provider of wealth and riches to her loyal worshipers and admirers, and blesses children with beauty. Oftentimes, the beauty is said to be a destructive tool to the girls, but the deity possesses evil as much as she possesses good. Many men have been said to be captured by the deity for her own sexual satisfaction. Sometimes the men are left lifeless to be buried by the living, or their bodies are never found. Women who are not humble because they have been blessed with beauty are often left barren or without a man until they compensate the deity. Mami Wata also has very strong sexual prowess Mami Wata also has very strong sexual powers of sex starvation, seduction, and lust. In the Nigerian tradition, Mami Wata seduces men and reveals herself to them after sexual intimacy. The man is made to swear faithfulness to the deity or die. Any man that rejected her offer is said to suffer sudden death, poverty, and destruction to his family if he is married. The deity is also known to have a terrible temper and jealousy issues, which often lead to the death of many. Okay, now here's another depiction of Mami Wata as well. Now, Mami Wata in Western societies, for many Africans who find themselves in the Western world, specifically in the Caribbean and Southern America, the deity of Mami Wata is said to have traveled with them on the Atlantic Ocean, protecting them and taking some of their pain to relieve them, protecting them and taking some of their pain to relieve them. She is said to have capsized many slave ships that do not make it to their Western destinations, especially during the abolition of the slave trade. She emerged as a human many times to the slaves, often as a beautiful girl who dies at a very young age. This was her way of protecting her people who were no longer close to the water bodies. By appearing in human form in between decades, she reminded the slaves, the African slaves, that she had not forsaken them. For many African communities in areas like the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Brazil, Mami Wata emerged to the people as Lasaren, L-A-S-I-R-E-N, La Siren, Lasaren, Yemenya, which is in the Yoruba tradition of Ifa, Yemenya, Santa Marta La Dominadora, and Oxum, O-X-U-M. Now, Mami Wata appears in many children's stories as a mystical character who often brings good or bad luck depending on one's character. Many are warned to resist the seductive charms of the deity, believing that if one can resist Mami Wata, they can live long and endure life's obstacles. Now, Mami Wata found her way into Western societies by the 15th century, when the sailors who mixed with the indigenous Africans and slaves found their way into their lands. In Western culture, she is referred to as a mermaid with beautiful features. In Western culture, she is referred to as a mermaid with beautiful features. Today, many Western scholars believe that Mami Wata is a pidgin adaptation of the word mermaid adapted by African societies, P-I-D-G-I-N. So check out this article here from face-to-faceafrica.com dealing with Mami Wata, the most celebrated mermaid-like deity from Africa who crossed over to the West. This is by Elizabeth Johnson, Elizabeth Ofosua Johnson, from July 20th, 2018 for face-to-faceafrica.com. So if the white supremacists are upset about the Little Mermaid being African, well, the original mermaids were African. That goes back to Mami Wata. So, you know, the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets. The more research they do, the older we get. Online history class today, you know, Saturdays 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So don't go anywhere. We have more information for you. If you like this type of information that we provide at the African History Network, you can support us, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. Visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, finance the Sunday night show, the African History Network show that I broadcast on 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. You know, I've been broadcasting the African History Network show for 13 years, 7 years on 9:10 a.m. WFDF. So we're on Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Here's our PayPal, Cash App information right here on the homepage of our website. So if you want to support us, $10, $15, $25, $50, $100, whatever it is, it definitely helps. You can click right here for the Cash App link as well as the PayPal link. This is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN Show. And when you go to it, it'll say Michael and show my picture there. These other ones are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. There are 5 that I have identified that have been stealing money from us, fake African History Network Cash App accounts. Our tag is, our Cash App tag is $ the AHN Show, SHOW. If you type it in, make sure you type in the full tag, because these other fake ones will show up before you type in, you know, the HOW. Okay, so that's why I put it right here and put our actual link here. I've contacted Cash App. They've opened an investigation. They're slow as Heinz ketchup. And it was last year that I opened up this investigation. I'm still trying to follow up on them. On Saturdays, I teach ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. It's a 12-week online history course. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Okay, I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. So you can register for the class right now. As soon as you register, there's you'll be able to join us for the day's class, and you can go back and watch the previous classes also. Okay, so we deal with history, thousands of years of history, look at what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place, and also we look at, we go through and analyze the transatlantic slave trade. We look at the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors as well. Okay, so in this class, Saturday, April 29th. Then on the class is on sale $60, regularly $130. On Sundays, I teach Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. We go through and look at history chronologically. This class will be on Saturday, April 30th, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. We have a bundle pack. You can register for both of these classes for only $100. You can use this information with the children as well. I would say the information is PG-13. So it's not overly graphic. We won't do a lot of cursing or anything like that. It's not crazy like that. Okay. So you can register for the class, and there'll be 5 of my lectures in the video library in digital format. So you get a bonus of 5 of my lectures also. Now, it took me, I've been teaching this class on and off for 7 years, and I started teaching it back in 2017. I've been studying history 31 years. You see me on Roland Martin Unfiltered. You see me on Faraji Muhammad Show, The Culture. Many of you all watch the African History Network show and been following us for years, even when I was on Blog Talk Radio. So with this class, this evolved out of a lecture that I did in January 2014 called Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And that was about 7 years of research. That it was a 4.5-hour lecture. But we can't start studying our history in slavery, even with transatlantic slave trade, which is important to study. We can't start in 1619 or in the 1440s when the Portuguese get involved. In 1441 with Anton Gonzalez. We have to understand the history chronologically and deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who enter into the Iberian Peninsula today known as Spain and Portugal in 711 AD. Now, this course not only deals with the transatlantic slave trade, but it also deals with the thousands of years of history that leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. August 20th, 2019 marked the 400th year anniversary of the 20 and odd Africans who came into Point Comfort in Virginia on August 20th, 1619 on the White Lion pirate ship, in what would later be called the colony of Virginia. Now, this year of 2019 was known as the year of return, as many African Americans were reconnecting to Africa, especially West Africa, and traveling to Ghana and other West African countries. When we discuss the transatlantic slave trade, we have to first understand that African people are the original people of North, Central, and South America, and have been in the land we call the United States of America at least 51,700 years ago. Now, last week when we spoke with Tony Browder, author of Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, and he's also the author of Egypt on the Potomac and Finding Karakamoon, he talked about the Olmecs and Olmec culture as well. And we talked about the African origins, the African root of Olmec culture coming from ancient Kemet. We've interviewed Dr. David Imhotep numerous times, and these are actual slides from the class, by the way. I put together the whole curriculum. There's about 80 to 100 articles that we reference in this class. There's 7 books that we use as reference. You don't have to buy any of the books. We show you excerpts of the book on the screen, okay? But Dr. David Imhotep's book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, it came out in 2011. On page 14 of his book, he deals with a discovery made in Allendale County, South Carolina in 2004 by Dr. Albert Goodyear. Evidence of a African presence 51,700 years ago in Allendale County, South Carolina. Okay. And people are asking for my email address. You can email me right through the website. Go to TheAHNShow.com, TheAHNShow.com, and you can email me right through the website. Also, when we have the website up here on the screen, and then also you can email me as well at TheAHNShow@TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAHNShow@TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. All right. Now, they found, Dr. Albert Goodyear is an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina. They found 13 different types of evidence to thoroughly document an African presence in the land that we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years ago. They found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeletons, structures, and tools. Okay, they found 13 different types of evidence fairly documenting an African presence in this country that we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years ago. Okay, so it's totally ridiculous for people to think, especially for African Americans to think, that African people first came to this land as slaves, conquered and shackled by Europeans. Okay, that's a total misunderstanding of history. Now, this is a picture of Dr. Albert Goodyear. He's a white archaeologist. This is an article from ScienceDaily.com, that came out in November 18th, 2004. The article is about 19 years old. It's still at ScienceDaily.com. You can go back and read it. It's called New Evidence Puts Man in North America 50,000 Years Ago. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. Here's a summary of what the article says. Now, this is not my summary. This is the summary coming from ScienceDaily.com. Radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains, where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear, indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old. Meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. Okay, so we have to ask the question, well, who were these humans? Okay, who was on Earth 50,000 years ago, 51,000 years ago? Okay, these were the Khoisan. The Khoisan have the oldest DNA on the planet. They're the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. They go all around the world. And they were also here in the land we call the United States of America. Now, in October 2012, genetic study published in Science magazine found that the Khoisan in Southern Africa, are the oldest ethnic group of modern humans, with their ancestral line originating about 100,000 years ago. The Khoisan, formerly called by the derogatory term Bushmen, are genetically unique, and no other currently known population had separated so early from our common modern human ancestor, according to the report. Now, here are a couple of Khoisan women. Now, the Khoisan are the short-statured Africans, okay? The Khoisan live mainly in Southern Africa in territories spanning Botswana, Namibia, Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. They are largely divided into two groups: hunters and gatherers, known as the Sans people, and keepers of the livestock, known as the Khoikhoi people. The Khoisan languages include the distinctive click sounds, that are not found in the languages of their neighbors. Okay, AtlantaBlackStar.com has a good article entitled 5 Ethnic Groups That Prove the First Humans Were Black. Okay, and some of you will have seen the interview from April 17, 2014, where I interviewed my friend Runoko Rashidi, and we were talking about Chevalier, Joseph Boulogne, and the Moors and the Black Madonnas in Europe. And we're rebroadcasting that interview as well, because the movie Chevalier is out, that talks about Joseph Boulogne, who is also known as the Black Mozart. Okay, and he was born in Guadeloupe. He was half French and half African. But the interview I did, in that interview with Runoko Rashidi, he talks about articles that he was writing for AtlantaBlackStar.com. All right, now, how's everybody doing today? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. Be sure to register for this online class. And we have the bundle pack on the homepage of our website, TheAHNHistoryNetwork.com, TheAHNHistoryNetwork.com, for the online classes. So you get both online classes and you get bonus content as well. It's only $100. It's a $300 value. Even after the course is over with, you'll still have full access. You can go back and watch the entire course. Okay. Or you can watch as much as you want to. All right. So we look at different archaeological discoveries that have come out in the last 15 to 20 years. There was a big discovery that came out in 2010, found on the Greek island of Crete, and they found stone tools that date back at least 130,000 years ago. Okay, stone tools on the Greek island of Crete. Over the course of 2 summers, archaeologists say are at least 130,000 years old, which is considered strong evidence for the earliest known seafaring in the Mediterranean, and calls for rethinking the maritime capabilities of pre-human cultures. Okay, so we go through and look at discoveries like Tanis Heraklion, the lost city of Egypt, and there are at least 2 lost cities of Egypt. You have Tanis Heraklion, but you also have Dazzling Aten, and Dazzling Aten was revealed in like the last couple of years. This article from YahooNews.com, sunken Egyptian city reveals 1,200-year-old secrets. Okay, so the British publication, The Telegraph, reports that 150 feet beneath the surface of Egypt's Bay of Abu Qir, they found 64 ships, 16-foot tall statues, 700 anchors, countless gold coins, and smaller artifacts. Archaeologist Frank Gardillo estimates that Tanis Heraklion was built around 8th century BC, Okay, so you're talking about more than 700 years before Cleopatra VII was born. Now, these are some of the artifacts that were found at the bottom of the sea. All right, we look at different archaeological discoveries, and when these new discoveries come out, they're causing the scientists, the archaeologists, and the paleontologists to push the timelines back. And we keep finding out that based upon archaeology, we're much older than we've been told, and Homo sapiens are older than we've been told. So Runoko Rashidi, Dr. Charles Finch, and other African-centered scholars have been saying that African people, or Homo sapiens, modern man, are not 75,000 to 100,000 years old, but at least 300,000 years old. This article from NBCNews.com came out June 17, 2017. We're older than we thought. New find pushes human origin back 100,000 years. Okay, we're older than we thought. New find pushes human origin back 100,000 years. So an excerpt from the article says that in all the news outlets picked up this story. They all have New York Times, Washington Post, NBC, CBS, ABC, Associated Press, Time Magazine, National Geographic. They all have articles on this. Modern humans evolved much earlier than previously thought. Researchers reported new discoveries at a rich site in Morocco show modern humans were hunting and probably cooking game animals. 300,000 years ago, which is 100,000 years earlier than what scientists have believed up until now. 100,000 years earlier than what scientists have believed up until now. Now, new discoveries and new dating methods show that, in fact, many of the bones belong to modern Homo sapiens, and they lived as far back as 300,000 or 350,000 years ago. The earliest previous Homo sapiens bones date back 195,000 years ago, and they're from clear across the continent in modern-day Ethiopia. All right, so taken together, the findings show modern humans were dispersed across Africa long before anyone ever thought. And not only were we migrating from the Nile Valley region of Africa into Central Africa and West Africa much earlier than people thought, but we were migrating out of Africa and around the world much earlier than many people thought as well. Okay, so we go through and look at a number of archaeological discoveries. We look at the ancient African presence in Asia and in Europe, the African presence in Europe and things of this nature. African people were the first Asians. The earliest modern human Homo sapiens population of Asia were also of African birth. We're speaking of the diminutive Africoids, the short-statured Africans, the extremely important and much romanticized family of Black people phenotypically characterized by unusually short statures, skin complexions that range from yellowish to dark brown, tightly curled hair, and in frequent cases, like many other Blacks or Africans, stetophagia, which means deposits of fat around the buttocks, or what we would look at as large buttocks, like Sarah Bartman or Sarta J. Bartman, okay, who was a Khoikhoi, okay, and we know in the 1800s she was put on display in Europe, okay, and then she's going to become a prostitute. She lived a horrible life, but this is Europeans fascinated with the bodies of African people and African people's sexuality and dehumanizing us at the same time. So they are probably more, these short-statured Africans, these diminutive Africoids, are probably more familiar to us by such pejorative or negative terms as pygmies, negritos, and negrilos. Similar peoples who live today in Southern Africa have been titled Bushmen. More accurate names for these latter people are the San people, translated as original inhabitants. Okay, all right. So we go through and look at this history. We look at the Olmecs as well, and we deal with also the connection between Olmec culture and the new Black Panther movie, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, that brought in the Latino angle with making Prince Namor Latino, and it dealt with the Spanish colonization of Mexico as well, because Prince Namor is 500 years old, and there's a scene where he goes back to when he was a child, and you see the Spanish colonizers conquering his people and enslaving them. Okay, so we go through and we also this Black Panther, the first movie and second movie, deals with a lot of African culture and African history as well. Mandinka Egyptian Olmec connection. So this comes from page 82 of The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep. We talked about this last week when I interviewed Tony Browder. A major ethnic group among the ancient Egyptian Nubians were the Manding people, Manding, or the Mandinka, an original Niger-Congo homeland in the general vicinity of the upper Nile Valley is probably as good a hypothesis as any for the origin of the Manding. The Proto-Manding migration had to have taken place during the African Aqualithic. Okay, now he goes on to say, when the Manding reached Central America and began mixing with the local population, they were labeled Olmecs. When these Africans reached Central America and began mixing with the local population, they were labeled Olmecs. The Olmecs were supposedly a mixture of the Manding or the Mandinka and American Indians or Amerins, Ameriinds. Do not forget that the Manding or Mandinka make up the base of the Olmecs. So the Egyptians, the ancient Kemetic people, the Kemiyu, the Egyptians, the Manding, and the base of the Olmecs are related to each other. This is from page 82 of The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep. So we go through, look at history. We look at this history chronologically as much as possible. We talk about the Druids. We deal with the Greeks and Romans conquering ancient Kemet. And the Druids are dealing with a watered down version of the teachings coming out of ancient Kemet, coming out of ancient Egypt. Okay. And we're going to see the Druids go into Ireland and take this information into Ireland as well. And this is who a British slave named Patrick is fighting against and killing when Pope Celestine I sends Patrick into Ireland in 432 Common Era AD to convert the Irish population to Christianity. And standing in the way of that are the Druids, who are dealing with the gnosis or the true knowledge, and they're dealing with a watered down version of teachings coming out of ancient Kemet, coming out of ancient Egypt. And he is killing the Druids, and the Druids wear a helmet similar to the helmets worn by or the headdress of Nasubitis or pharaohs in ancient Kemet, and they have an asp on them or a cobra, a snake. Okay, so they were referred to as the snake people. And when we hear the mythology of Patrick driving the snakes out of Ireland, first of all, Ireland is a cold climate, and it's an island, and there's no evidence, there's no archaeological evidence, there's no evidence whatsoever of snakes being in Ireland. So when we talk about Patrick driving the snakes out of Ireland, they were talking about the snake people who were called Druids. That's who this is, a metaphor. It's talking about symbolically. There were no snakes in Ireland. They're talking about him driving the Druids out, who were dealing with a watered down version of the teachings coming out of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, and then forcing Christianity upon the people. So we deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who are taking the teachings from the Nile Valley region of Africa into Europe, and this brings Europe out of the Dark Ages. They're taking the science and the mathematics and the art and the chemistry, the periodic tables, the medicine, the surgical instruments, all this knowledge they're taking into Europe, and they're Africanizing Europe to varying degrees. And they're also intermixing into the European population, intermixing into the European bloodline as well. We know they lose their last control of the last stronghold of Granada, January 2nd, 1492, in the Spanish Granada Wars. And Christopher Columbus is going to set sail August 3rd, 1492. Okay, we look at things like the Tekken, which is a symbol of ancient, a symbol of resurrection, coming from the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus, okay, known as the First Holy Trinity. Now, some of this information may go outside of the circumference of your own awareness. Just because you disagree with it or don't like it does not mean it's not true. It just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. Now, there were approximately 1,200 Tekkenu built in ancient Kemet, but only about a dozen are found in Egypt today. Many of the Tekkenu removed from Egypt are now in Istanbul, Turkey, London, France, England, Paris, France, Berlin, Germany, New York, Rome, Italy, Vatican City, and elsewhere throughout the world. The Tekenu for plural, the Tekenu are now called obelisks by their new owners, and few know their origin or that they symbolize the resurrection of the African king Asar. So if you read Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder, page 17, and this is one of the books we use in the class also, Browder deals with this type of information. Now, once again, you don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in class, but we use the books for reference to document what we're talking about. And I show you excerpts of the book on the screen usually. All right, now, when we look at Freemasonry, the word Mason is derived from the Latin words mass and sun. Mason means child of light and expresses the desire to pursue light, which is a metaphor for the sun, which symbolizes knowledge. The term child of light or sons and daughters of light, which was first used to identify students who had completed 42 years of study in the temples of ancient Kemet. Many Masonic temples were modeled after the temples of ancient Kemet, places where light or knowledge was imparted in a series of steps or degrees. So the concept of going to a institution of higher learning and getting your credentials in a series of degrees, okay, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, etc. That concept comes straight out of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. Okay, Kemet meaning land of the blacks. That comes out of the Nile Valley region of Africa. All right, now read pages 18 and 32 of Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder. So we go through and look at this history. We deal with the Black Madonnas and child coming from the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru being born of a virgin birth on December 25th. And then the decolorized version of that story, and we see the white Mary and Jesus. We look at different Neteru, the forces of nature, the deities in ancient Kemet as well, like Ma'at. We go through and look at some of the history of the Moors. We look at why Christmas is celebrated on December 25th, and that deals with astronomy. We deal with the film Black Panther. The Panther deity Bast comes from Bastet, which is a neter coming out of ancient Kemet. And Bastet was an ancient Egyptian goddess worshipped in the form of a lioness and later a cat. She was a goddess of warfare in Lower Kemet, worshipped as early as about 2890 BC during the Second Dynasty. Okay. We deal with things like what the word Wakanda means. Wakanda is a real word. Wakanda basically means possesses secret powers. We see some different spellings of it. But in Wisconsin, there is a Wakanda Water Park in Wisconsin. It's been there for years. There are schools named Wakanda, like in Nebraska. Okay. And we see Wakanda is Omaha Ponca, Sioux Indian, and Omaha Ponca and Sioux Indian Native American word that basically means possesses secret powers.